When it comes to commercial fishing, understanding and ringing the changes with the time of the year is really important. Back end of the summertime now, coming into the autumn, the temperatures dropping. More importantly though, the water temperatures dropping. And this is a trigger point for fish to realise that they need to get that body fat on before the temperature drops and the actual metabolism of a fish changes. So we've actually come to a beautiful venue, a venue that I've not been to for a long time, Little John's Lake. It's just on the outskirts of Nottingham. This is the perfect place to demonstrate how effective pellets are. Now, let's go back to basics. Farm-fed fish that are stocked, where commercials are stocked with farm-fed fish, their main staple diet is pellets. That is what they're brought up on. That is what they relate to when it comes to food source. Obviously, they hold a fair amount of food content, food value within the pellet, but more importantly, pellets, because of the weight of the pellet, they make noise, they make vibration on the surface. That alone attracts fish into the zone, but more importantly, instigates fish into feeding, into opening their mouths, because they're so used and familiar to that actual noise from the farms where they were brought up. This actually gets the fish competing. So what we're going to be doing today is a really nice simple approach, but I'm going to run through everything from start to finish. I'm going to run through the rig, one rig I'm going to be using today, the feeding patterns, which may change as the day progresses, but literally using one bag of fishery pellets to catch everything that swims, from carp, F1s, some skimmers hopefully. But let me tell you, it's so effective and it's such an enjoyable way and simple way of catching fish, as long as you understand the basics. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to run through everything from start to finish, how to keep your fishing simple but logical at the same time. So let's go to the peg and talk about pellet fishing in a little bit more detail. So let's talk about the basics now. Feed and presentation, like what I said in the intro, very simple day on paper, because we're using, let's talk about the bait first, because that's first and foremost. Pellets, fishery pellets. These are Coppen's 6mm pellets. Intentionally, I just want to be pinging with a catapult on the long pole. But I've also got, of course, always carry with you an array of kinder pots, because it could be a kinder potting day, I don't really know, but I want to create a clean swim. And what I mean by that is, it's only very shallow. It's only just over 3 foot deep, very soft bottom. So I don't want to create concentration of bait. I want to ping with a catapult. I want to make that interaction with the noise of the pellets hitting the surface. That is what we call, and what I class as, an aggravated feeding pattern, where the fish can hear the noise, but you feed them a minimum amount of bait. Therefore they come into the peg looking for bait. They can't really find a mass of bait, because I'm not feeding a concentration of bait, 1, 2, 3 pellets at a time, and therefore they could find your hook bait a whole lot quicker. And that is the principle behind what we're going to be doing today. So really nice and simple, and it's always a good point to remember is Coppens are such a good bait for this principle, because they're heavy. That means you can feed them more accurately and at further distances, and they sink in a straight line. And that's really important when you're fishing on the bottom, especially on waters where it may be a bit deeper. It might be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 foot. That is where Coppens play a big part in your bait armoury. Well, let's talk about the rig. Again, one rig does all. Now, I'm using, for the main line, before I start talking about the presentation, 017 Aero Slick Silk. Absolutely love this line. It's absolutely fantastic, with an 013 hook length. What I love about it, especially for rig line, is when you put shot on, move that shot up and down, which I will be doing an awful lot today. I'll be adjusting the shotting pattern accordingly to how the fish want the bait, how I want my rig to work. And of course, because we're on an open water, windy venue, I need to adjust that shotting pattern dictated by how strong the wind is in order to get that best bait presentation. Great line for your rigs and your hook lengths. Float wise, I'm using a 4x14. It's only, like I said, on the depth marker. If you see the depth marker, I'm using the Pro Match Kits. On every match kit within the Pro range of poles, the Aero range of poles more to the point, we've got depth markers to give you a rough guidance on what depth you're fishing at. You can see it's just over 3 foot deep. 4x14 bodes so well with this depth. I'd say up to 3.5 foot, 4 foot, a 4x14 is absolutely perfect on windy venues. Nice pair body as well, that's really important, and this is what I love about the Malman Speedy, that this particular pattern, how I've designed it, actually cuts through the water surface, the skim, that aids presentation, minimal hook bait movement. That's really important. Let's go back to basics. What I'm trying to achieve is my hook bait is looking as natural as possible, like the rest of the pellets on the bottom that I'm loose feeding that aren't attached to a hook. That is my goal. My goal is to create maximum bait presentation. With this float, I'm confident that I know I'm getting the best out of how my hook bait works. A 1.5mm bristle, nice bright colour as well, so I can see everything that's going on with my float. Wire stem. When it comes to open waters such as this place, wire stem floats are so important to give that float stability, but also to allow the float in the, I'd say, in the precarious area of water movement, which is the top few inches where the wind can really hit and force your float through. That's where a wire stem gives you that aided stability. Now let's talk about the shotting pattern. Now, I'm using number 9s all the way down. Now the beauty about number 9's uniform shot is it allows me to create an array of different shotting patterns from a bulk and droppers, but as you can see, I'm actually starting the session with a spread bulk. And let me tell you, as the day progresses, like I said at the start, it wouldn't surprise me if I'll alter this rig quite a few times to get the rig working right and get my hook bait working right, because it's quite a windy day today and I want to get that presentation bang right. That could be a case where I might actually end up, by hopefully the end of the session, bringing the shot down even more so, and this is the beauty about using the same shot. So I'm creating, just move that up a bit, a tighter spread bulk. That is condensing the weight of that rig nearer the bottom and aiding your hook bait to present better nearer the bottom. Also, actually, I'm using a 6-inch hook length, and what you can see, actually, I've put shot on my hook length, and this is what I love about this material as well, this Aero Slick Silk line. It allows me to put shot on my hook length, so rather than messing around swapping the length of my hook length, which then affects the depth that I've plummeted up at, which, as you can see here, is on the bristle. So I'm actually fishing dead depth. Then I can adjust that last dropper to help stabilise that hook bait. If it's all right, if the wind drops, or if how my rig works at that present time, I might have it up. If I start missing bites, I want to create and centralise my rig a little bit more. It allows me to move that shot as far down as I want until I get the presentation right and I hit the bites. That's the most important thing. Down to an SLWG with a micro band. It's a 16 hook, bodes so well with a 6mm pellet and the size of the fish that we're targeting today. And that is it. One rig, but I might be doing an awful lot with that rig, and this is why you've got to keep your rig choice simple but logical at the same time. So we're going to start the session now. Simple approach, but I've got a few little tricks up my sleeve before we actually get the peg going. So I've already talked about the rig and how I'm going to be feeding the peg, how I think, but I'm just going to give it 30 seconds, see if I get a response from not making any noise, lowering my rigging, a single pellet in my peg, see if I get a bite. I'm not going to give it long, but I'm going to come back in a minute, well, less than a minute, and do a little trick that I've caught a lot of fish on over the years before I've introduced any bait into my swim. So I've not made noise with this particular approach. Another 10-15 seconds, and it's a great way of actually reading what's in your peg, what I'm doing now. Single bait, nothing else around it, so if there's fish there, they'll pick it up. Right, I've not had a bite. Let's come back. And what I'm going to do, I didn't like that pellet anyway. I've started with a slightly spread bulk, but what I'm going to do is now, noise is everything, especially at the start of the session. So I'm going to bolt the shot up like so, and I'm actually going to make some noise on the surface now with my bulk and my hook bait, just to see if I actually get a response from my pellet alone before I introduce bait. So I'm going to lift the rig up, and I'm going to just drop the pellet on the surface 3 times, so you can imagine you've got the pellet hitting the surface and that bulk together. Wait for the rig to straighten up, lower it down, there's no bait gone in yet, and let's see if we get a response. Wow, now that is amazing. That is amazing. Nice clean bite, that's definitely in the mouth. And that just goes to prove how important it is to take your time. Think about what you're doing. Don't rush. Enjoy the moment. In you go. First one of the day. And we've not fed a single bit of bait yet. Let's have a look where the hook is. Look at that. Oh, it's a lively one, aren't you, mate? Oh, calm down. Let's hold him up for camera, seeing he's the first one. Oh, he is lively, aren't you, mate? Look at that. Hey? Single pellet. So, rather than getting giddy now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go back out and not feed again and see what happens, because that bite was so clean. So clean. And I think a big advantage is, like what I said about the rig, they've actually got a very tight spread bulk at the bottom, but more importantly, I've got a shot on my hook length, a number 9 stop. So that's really straightening the hook length up very quickly. Get to my marker halfway down my 40-metre section. I'm going to do one plop now. One single plop. And you can imagine that shot as well, because it's reasonably tight together. That's making noise as well. So it's almost as if there's 2 pellets entering the water. Look at that. Bulk's just lifted up. I'm going to repeat the process. Pick my catapult up, ready. Pellets are in the pouch, ready. But let's give it a minute. See what happens. Always think ahead. The best way of looking at it is like good snooker players. They're not thinking about the actual shot, well they are, but they're thinking about where they need that ball to be for the next shot and the next 2 shots ahead of that, planning ahead. So always think ahead. So, a nice clean bite. Amazing, absolutely amazing. Here's stocky. It just goes to prove, don't rush to put bait out. And especially now we're coming into the colder months, that's even more so important. Especially with, look at that, little bit of carp. Carp and F1s. Because as the water temperature cools, they start herding up, and you, as an angler, could be sat on a ball of carp and F1s right in front of you. And as soon as you put a dollop of bait, let's call it, they could back away from it. And you could actually cancel out a chance of a match-winning peg before the match has even got going. So take your time. So let's repeat the process again. This is great, this. Bagging up on one pellet. So again, one slap, one drop, so to speak. Wait for the rig to straighten up. So what I'm doing now, I'm thinking, I'm going to put this rig in, I'm going to time it in my head. I'm going to give it 30 seconds. I'm thinking ahead now. If I haven't had a bite, an indication, I'm going to lift the rig up and put it in again. And if it doesn't go then, I am then going to feed, because I've got to get the peg going at some point. This will not work all day, but it's a great way of nicking a few fish early by the noise of your pellet. It's so important to understand that the carp, the fish, are present in your swim when there's colour in the water. And look, I'm getting bites almost as if I've fed this peg already. It's crazy. Now, if I'm getting this many bites before I've even fed, I've got to be very careful when I do feed, because I might have a problem with fish coming shallow, because they are definitely on the feed and on the move. And like what I said when I was talking about the rig, it's only 3 foot deep. Right, I'm starting to miss bites now. I'm going to give it one more time. Like I said, I've got to feed. I've got to get the peg going. Got to get it working. Amazing, absolutely amazing. I can't remember the last time, especially in the summertime, this has happened. And you can tell everything's right, clean bites as well. But more importantly, it's a clean bottom, because there's no bait on the bottom. So there's no reason for him to be stirring the bottom up, especially on a soft, silty bottom, what we're fishing on today. It's not going to alter the depth of my swim. Getting bigger as well. Hello, mate. A lively one. Cleanly hooked. Look at that. Beautiful. That's what it's all about. Right, I am definitely going to feed this time. But again, go through the same process. Just give it 30 seconds, because whilst ever this is working, why would I want to create chaos in my peg? You can imagine the fish haven't got any choice. They've got to take my hook bait, because there's no other bait there. It makes, in theory, perfect sense if the peg allows you to do it. And on this particular day, it seems to be okay. At this moment, it could change now. I might not get another bite doing it. But let me tell you, 3 fish in as many minutes at the start of the match is crucial. So 3 slaps or 3 plops, Wind's picking up now as well. This is where that long line, never fish too short a line on windy venues. I'm just amazed that this float's still going under. And I've got 2 number 8 back shot just to help stabilise that float. So every time my pole moves, it's not knocking against my float. I want to create good bait presentation. The interesting thing is this is the time of the year, coming into autumn, the water temperature's dropping. It's like a trigger point for the fish to start feeding more positively, to get that body fat on before the metabolism of the fish changes and they can't digest the food. Then they've got body fat on in preparation for when the water temperature does drop and the frosts really do come and the temperature drops and the water clarity increases and the fish start shoaling up in tight areas and they don't move around as much. They've got that body fat, they've got that reserve on them. This is why usually September, October is the best time of the year for fishing on commercials. Right, so like I said, I've given it enough time now. I'm starting to get false indications. Let's feed the peg. First time with catapult for, I need to get it right. I need to get that feed right. I think we're going to end up having a good day here. So I'm not going to feed again because I've just fed 4 pellets and got a response from it. And in theory, what I want now is the fish that are in my peg to eat those 4 pellets and whatever the other pellets that I've fed as well. I want to create a clean swim all the time. It's not like any other approach this. You've got to be thinking ahead all the time. So ideally I want to be landing this fish, well that's a nice fish, it's a ghosty, and going out, not feeding, and hopefully getting a response very quickly just from my pellet alone, because how I'm thinking is that there's no other pellets in my peg apart from what I'm going to lower down, which is on the hook. Look at that, what a beautiful fish. Nice clean bite as well. Let's hook this rig up. So definitely the rig's working well, and that shot on my hook length I think is making a massive difference, especially with how many fish are in my peg, with the little amount of bait I've already fed. Look at that, that is what it's all about. What a beautiful fish. One of the most important aspects of setting your tackle up regarding pole wise, rig wise, is the elastic choice that you're going to be using. That because I'm fishing for carp doesn't mean say I want to fish a heavy elastic. What I've got to take into consideration is the terrain, the elements that I've got to deal with. Windy day, so I'm actually using quite a soft elastic. This is quite a soft 12 elastic. This means even with skimmers, smaller match carp, even less than a pound, there's going to be plenty of elastic coming out. And that compensates from a pole bouncing around in the wind when I'm trying to bring that pole back, playing fish in that strong wind. I've got that added cushion, and also that's putting less stress on the tackle itself. And also one thing to always remember is by using a softer elastic, it enables you as an angler to land fish a lot quicker because there's less pressure on the fish. And on these shallow waters, if you use a heavy elastic out there, you're going to bump more fish, but also they're going to fight harder because there's more pressure on them. It's amazing how quickly you can land fish on a light elastic. If the wind picks up, and this is why I've got another 2 top kits, not with rigs on, but this enables me just to swap the grade of elastic according to how I want the the peg to work, how the fish are fighting, and the conditions I'm faced with. So my go-to elastic is this. It's a very soft 12. These match kits are rated up to a 12, but I could quite easily step up to a 14 because these top kits are so strong. So always bear that in mind when it comes to elastic choice. Be prepared to make that change if you feel that the elastic that you're using is too stiff, or on the other side to it, too soft. I'm just going to make a change. I'm going to put a pot on, and I want to minimise the amount of noise I'm making because it could be the pellets on the surface just for now until I get the peg going. Ideally, I would just want to be pinging, but I want to get a run of fish early. And a good way of doing that, especially when you know, like what I know now, I've got carp in my peg, is I want to minimise the noise of the bait entering the water. So you've got two ways of feeding. I can feed like that with pellets from a height, very similar, not the same noise as pellets from a catapult, but what I'm actually going to be doing is lowering the pot into the water and just tapping very gently the pot so the pellets naturally fall out with hardly any noise whatsoever. And especially in this, what I think at this moment in time is happening in my peg, this could be crucial. A great way of delivering bait into my peg and preventing fish that are shallow intercepting my bait on the way down because they can't hear the pellets entering the water. Therefore, I'm getting a larger percentage of pellets getting to the bottom, which is of course what I'm trying to achieve. I'm fishing on the bottom, and that's where I want the feed, at least some of the feed, to get to. So I'm just holding the pot underneath the water. I don't want to make too much noise, even with that pot that can draw fish in. I put 4 pellets in the pot, so I'm not overfeeding the peg. If you put a full pot of pellets in, as regards to fill your pot up, you can't regulate how many pellets you're feeding because I can't see the pellets coming out of the pot. And this is a great way of another feeding pattern that you can get your peg working. And what you got to remember is this video is about coming into the colder months of the year. There's no point in me talking about trying to catch fish shallow, because once the frosts arrive, all this information will be relative for every commercial fishery trying to catch fish on the bottom with pellets. Managing your peg. Do you use a catapult? Do you use a pot? And like I said at the start, every day is different, and you have to accept the fact that every time you get on the bank, your feeding patterns will be completely different than the last time you went. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to kick-start my peg. I'm trying to catch fish and get a feeling for what's going on in my swim. And a kinder pot is a great way of safely delivering your bait, minimal noise. And it's evident to see, especially with how the session started, when I got 3 fish without feeding a single bit of bait, that there's fish there already. The only problem with a kinder pot is sometimes it can group your bait too tight. And on shallow, silty bottoms, it's good to spread your bait so the fish aren't feeding in one specific area. Because when that happens, often is the case, they will actually deepen your swim. And I do not want that to happen. And this is a bit about pinging. The principle behind pinging is you've got them searching over, let's say, 2-3 foot square, hopefully, ideally, picking up 1 pellet at a time. As soon as you group your pellets together, that's where they burrow the bottom out. And that's why I've only put 4 pellets in my pot. Now that's definitely not worked, which is a good thing. That's telling me at this moment in time that I still need to carry on catapulting. And this is what I'm on about. This session is about teaching you and helping you as an angler to understand that it's not a race, it's a marathon. And it helps you as an angler to learn each time you go out that there's no rush to put bait out. You've seen how many fish I've caught initially, and I honestly think from what I've fed and what I've caught and what's happening now that I need to make that noise. But later on in the session I could end up fishing this kinder pot again, but at the moment it's not right. But what I will do is I'm going to come back and I'm going to feed the pellets through a kinder pot from a height. Again, 4 pellets, just group them a bait a little bit tighter than what it would be with a catapult. Another good thing is always wet your pot once you get out where you can actually tilt your pole down into the water. Just wet your pellets, and that helps them stick in the pot, so when you ship out to the further distances it prevents them bouncing out. So I know I'm going to be feeding 4 pellets, whereas if I didn't do that there might only be 2 pellets left. So what I'm going to do, turn the pot up. So they've gone into the water now, 4 pellets, exactly where I want my hook bait to go. But yeah, like I said, you have to be careful with this, especially on soft silty bottoms and shallow lakes like we are. Could be too much bait, and so this is why you have to be really disciplined with what you put in your pot. Let's see if we get a response from that. Look at that liner straight away, you see. That means there's too much bait grouped together. And this is the beauty about pinging with a catapult. That is the perfect example of why kinder potting too accurately is a disadvantage. And all of a sudden, look at that. Yeah, I've got one on, but is it foul hooked, you see? It's cratered, that's foul hooked. I'd be amazed if that's not foul hooked. All of a sudden it's just them 4 pellets alone grouped tight has caused a problem in the swim. But I had to show you to help you understand how important it is to manage your peg properly. Yeah, that's fouled. You can imagine those 4 pellets has brought them fish. And he's off. I've always kept my pole low so my rig's not damaged. Hopefully it won't have broke me. No, it's not broke me. But that is a perfect example of why you can't go crazy with a pot on a really shallow lake with hard pellets. So what I'm going to do, put a fresh pellet on. Take the pot off. And actually that's done a job of bringing fish into my peg, but 2 grouped together. Initially I'm not going to feed again. Let's see if I can get a fish before I pick my catapult up again. Just to clean my peg out, so to speak, to ensure that there's no other bait there. So just drop the pellet in once. I'm waiting for everything to calm down before I pick that catapult up, or well, whether I actually feed with the catapult. And hopefully I'll start hooking them in the mouth. Always keep everything nice and low. Hello, mate. Especially when you're not sure if it's in the mouth or just outside the mouth. I want to keep this rig working for as long as possible. Just these little things are the difference between you catching all day. Yeah, it's in the mouth. Look at that. And I honestly thought if I'd have lost that, I'd have swore blind it with how I looked. But I've kind of like wanted to create, and I feel as if I've achieved it, a clean peg now. Gone from missing bites, getting liners, to all of a sudden one in the mouth, and we can start in a way the peg again. And definitely that kinder pot was turning my peg upside down. So I've calmed the peg down by not feeding. You're going to behave, mate. Look at that. That is what it's all about. Thinking about how you're feeding your peg. Right, one thing I did mention earlier as part of my rig setup, but I'd just like to touch base on it briefly, because I'd say it's one of the most important elements of any deck rig, whether you're fishing down the margins, short pole, long pole. Back shot is crucial if the fishery allows you to do it. It's not part of the float weight, but I can't stress how important it is for creating stability within the rig. And especially with pellet fishing, you're trying to fish dead depth. So when you plumb it up, you trying to achieve the principle that your pellet is just touching the bottom. So when a fish does intercept your hook bait, it registers on your bristle straight away, which of course gives you the bite and the reason to lift or strike, preferably lift. And this is where backshot plays a big part, because you're not laying line on the bottom. And when you lay line on the bottom with bait such as worms and maggots, that helps stabilise the rig. With pellets, you really are relying upon the backshot to stabilise the rig and maintain your hook bait in the same place. Going back to feed and presentation, that if the feed is static on the bottom and then your hook bait is dragging across your swim, it looks unnatural, and it's also prone to foul looking fish that are in your peg present feeding on the particles in your peg that are static on the bottom. So regardless of where you go or what depth you fish or where you're fishing your peg regarding down the edge or in front of you, always try to use backshot. My go-to backshot is 2 number 8s. That's just enough weight to create what I'd class as an L shape in the line. So you can imagine the weight of the 2 number 8s is straightening the line from the pole tip to the shot, and then a 45-degree angle when you're holding the rig like what I'm doing now to the float. So my pole can be moving like so, but it's not hitting the float. And that is so important on commercials and natural waters as well. Equally important on both kind of venues where you're trying to create that great bait presentation. So wherever you go, always try to use backshot. Very important when it comes to rigs. Well, that was a lovely bite. And ooh, quite a wild fish. This is what it's all about, getting your peg working. And I've had to make a few changes today. Feeding, presentation. But this is what I love about pellet fishing. Keeping it simple, but with one rig allowing you to really think about how the fish are feeding and how you need to present your bait at its best. to get the best out of your peg. And especially when it comes to when it goes a bit colder, this is one of the most effective ways of catching fish on commercials right across the country. Look at that, what a beautiful fish. And what a beautiful way to round off a great day's fishing. Let's take the hook out. Hold him up for the camera, as long as he's going to behave. Look at that, eh? Now that is what it's all about. So, I really do hope you've enjoyed today's session and you can put all the information I've told you to use during the winter months when it goes cold, regardless of the hook bait size that you use, and catch loads of beautiful fish like that. And it's that nice today, I'm going to stop on and have another fish, because this could be the last day I'll be sat here in shorts and flip-flops before the cold weather comes. So until next time, tight lines.